Welcome to a wonderful show here today at Marlow FM, and I have the pleasure today of being joined by Ben Pritchard. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's lovely to have you with me today in the studio, and I can't wait to have a wonderful conversation.
No, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be really interesting. I didn't know this little station, this little studio existed, so it's fantastic to come here, and I'll definitely be tuning in the future.
It's quite lovely, actually, because we were in the library above Marlow Library beforehand, and we've been here for nearly a year, so it's a real treat to have both studios, and it just feels all nice in here for us. So it's lovely to welcome you. And the way that I like to have a chat with you, if it's okay, is just find out a little bit about you initially, and who you are, where you come from, how far you've travelled today to get to me. So where did you come from today, Ben?
So I came from Caversham, which is where the British rowing team train, which is a little teaser for later on. But yeah, so I came from Caversham today, but I'm from Swansea in South Wales.
I did have a little hint with your beautiful accent. I love the Welsh accent. Oh. It's lovely. So it's really nice to welcome you. And you've given us a little hint there about rowing, but tell me a bit about you. So before we go into what it is you're doing now, when you were at school and you kind of started out, what were your inspirations? What did you want to do? What things were you interested in?
So there's a film called A Few Good Men. It's got Tom Cruise in it and some other incredible actors. And it's got that famous line. And when I was growing up, I was watching that with my dad, and I said, that's the job I want to do. I want to become a naval barrister. And then I said I wanted to be in the Navy. And then a couple of weeks later, my dinner lady then, their son flew into school on a helicopter, who was a barrister. So I was like, well, I want to go in the Navy, and I want to be a barrister, and I've watched A Few Good Men, and they exist, so that's what I want to do. So that's kind of, my path has gone down that route. I didn't make it into the Navy, didn't make it into the forces, and I didn't become a barrister. So that's 3 X's across all those lines. I did study law, and I did do a master's in maritime law, and I do work in that field, just not as a barrister.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that field, about law, and what interests you about that.
So I work in insurance law, which I know everybody hates, and everyone says that insurers don't try and pay and they try and weasel their way out. But I actually work in Lloyd's of London in the city, and I'm currently working for sports and entertainment teams. So given what we're doing, we were having a discussion off air about artists and shows and stadia. That's kind of the cool bit of my job now. I get to insure and talk to those artists and those stadia and the people that run them and make sure that they have coverage in place that when something happens, they do get a payout. So that's kind of what I do now. It's a very, very old-fashioned industry, but it's an industry that I joined and loved instantly. And everything I loved it because everything was done face-to-face. That, around the time of my accident, was a bit of a hurdle because it was still an old-fashioned industry where everything was done face-to-face, and they didn't like working from home that much. And then obviously COVID happened, so now everyone works from home. So it has changed massively in the 8 years that I've been there. But I am enjoying every day of it.
But it's so important, that face-to-face connection. I mean, even us here now, it's really nice when you can kind of meet someone and kind of connect with their energy, and communication is key. So I imagine even with your outside interests and all the other things you do, the work that you're carrying out there, it's about the people you're meeting and the stories they're sharing and all the tiny little bits of insight in between, I imagine, is what really...
Exactly. You learn about the person and who they are, and people sell to people, right? You know, you can have the best product on the market, but if you don't get on with the person, you're never going to sell it. So by getting to know those people, by getting to have these conversations, you learn what makes people tick, and then you can go, okay, well, John may like this, so I'm going to send him that product, and Kelly might like this, and I'll send her that product, and they'll be completely 2 different products, but I know you'll like them because of what you do. So that's why I enjoy the outside hobbies that I do, local radio, my coffee, and
who doesn't love coffee? Well, I need it. I rely on coffee.
And my insurance work, because it's all face-to-face people business, and that's kind of what I like and who I am.
That's brilliant. So tell me a little bit more about what you do outside of that then, Ben. What are your interests, your passions, your hobbies? Let's go a bit deeper into that, if you don't mind.
So obviously, we'll come to my main job. My main job is a Paralympic rower. I am paralysed from the waist down. I'm sure we'll scratch that later on. But outside of that is music. We love vinyls on in the house. You know, a bit of an old soul in a young man's body. I know vinyl's making a comeback.
It is.
I've been a vinyl fan for a long time. my first record was Nat King Cole. I picked up for like 50 pence at a charity shop, and it's probably one of my most like prized possessions because it was my first vinyl that I had.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
yeah, I just love sport. I'm a rugby fan. I'm Welsh. Rugby runs through my blood. Sport is always on the telly. If it's not sport, it's music. And yeah, I have a little daughter and a wife, and just try and enjoy every day because we don't know when the last one's going to come.
No, and I think that is so important. I'm really passionate about people living in that present way of living through my own kind of journey, and then just arriving outside of here, teaching mindfulness and meditation and well-being is what I do. So being in this moment, living for the day is so powerful. So it's great to be able to listen to your inspiring story today. And I think we should play a bit of Nat King Cole through the show, inspired on your first record. Who's your favourite artist now, Ben?
Well, my favourite artist is the Boss, but right now I'm loving Sam Fender, and we spoke at length off air, but I think he is like a modern day Bruce Springsteen. He's a real storyteller. He connects with the people. He has a unique voice and a unique way of playing the guitar, and I think that the way he gets his music across like really hits home with me. And I was talking about how when a song comes on, I cry most of the time because it reminds me of me and my dad, and me and my dad have a great relationship. It's just the words in the song just hit me, and I have tears in my eyes. But yeah, so Sam Fender is probably my current top played artist for sure.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
If you've just tuned in, I'm joined today by Ben Pritchard in the Marlow FM studio, who's sharing his inspiring story. So far, we've been talking about music and coffee a little, but I want to talk, Ben, about the rowing, about your journey to where, the difficulties that you face, if you're happy to share a little with me, and just what's led you to the point that you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll start backwards, I guess. On the 1st of September, just gone, I became Paralympic champion with a new Paralympic record, which is something I've worked long and hard.
That's pretty impressive.
to get to after a disappointing Tokyo Paralympics. So I'm a 2 times Paralympian, 1 times Paralympic champion, but all within my new life of 8 years, because I had an accident in 2016, which has left me paralyzed from the ribcage down. I touched on it earlier, after a cycling accident. And once you get told you're never going to walk again, and you go through that process of adjustment, and it is still a process of adjustment 8 years later, and that's why I say to people that are on this mental health journey or this resilience journey, or whatever you want to tagline it, I say that it doesn't finish. There's no end point to that journey. You are still adapting. There will always be firsts. The first time that I want to go and dance with my daughter, for example, and I can't dance with my daughter in the traditional way. There's all these little things that happen, and they trip you up almost, and they send you back 5 steps. And you were just saying about living in the moment and being present. And when I had my darkest days in hospital, I didn't really speak to many people. I spoke to Dad about. My dad we have a love-hate relationship. I hate to love him, and yeah, so we are like best friends, but we can't spend too much time together in any one time, although I am currently living with him, which is a big feat in itself. So. But I spoke to him honestly and candidly, because I think that when stuff like that happens, he is definitely somebody I can lean on, and he's got that kind soul that you can just be like, Dad, this is how it is. He may not agree with you, but he'll listen, which I think is important. Sometimes we don't want advice, we don't want tips and tricks, we just want somebody to listen. And on this one occasion, I picked up the phone, and I was really struggling. I went to Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which is not too far from here. No. But my family lived in Swansea, obviously, so they couldn't just pop up to see me. They did their very best to see me every week, but they couldn't just pop up when I needed them.
Yeah.
So I'd pick up the phone and I said something to him, and unlike Dad, he didn't really give any advice. He just listened, and then phone call ended, and we carried on the day.
That's so powerful. Sorry to interject, but for you to have, I can feel the importance of the relationship with your dad anyway. But I think how amazing that you've got that space where someone can just listen and not try and fix or change, because the value in that alone, I just think, is second to none. So yeah, that's just lovely to hear. But
wait for part 2.
Am I going to be able to cope with part 2?
No, a couple of days later, he just sent me this link on Facebook, and we've probably all seen it. It's the viral clip of the US Admiral talking about why military men make their beds in the morning, and how the misconception is that they do it for cleanliness and they do it for order and they do it for subordination and to make sure that you know who's in charge. And then he flips it on its head and he says, actually, the reason why we do it is a psychological reason, is because it's the first task of the day completed. And then once you've completed one task, you can do 2 tasks, you can do 3 tasks, you can do 4 tasks. And my dad just said, just listen to it and just make the bed. So every morning in hospital, even when I couldn't move that well, I would make an effort to make my own bed. I'd get out of the bed and I'd try and make my bed. And then that was the first thing done. And then you'd brush your teeth, then you'd have a drink of water, then you'd go for a push, then you'd go to physio. And all of a sudden then I was doing the morning without remembering I'd done the tasks. But because I'd broken it down and did such small things, so, people say, what, you wrote down brush your teeth? And honestly, it got that dark that I had to tick off brushing my teeth. Not because I was unhygienic, but because I didn't even want to, You lose all passion. So by breaking down your day into such minute detail that you tick it off, you do get a sense of pride. And then it may take you 3 weeks to go with having to write each step down. It may take you 3 weeks, it may take you 4 months, it may take you a year, but hopefully at some point you may be able to condense 3 steps to 1 step, and it's have your morning, tick, have your afternoon, tick, have a full day, tick, do a week, tick. And that's essentially how I live my life now, because okay, my life is really busy and I have lots of hands in different pies and I'm juggling a lot, but at the end of the day it's each small task straight after each other. And that's what, if we flip it back to the rowing, that's what made me win gold, is that I broke my training down into small steps, 0.01 second gains to help me win a medal.
It's honestly, Ben, it is so inspiring just listening to you sharing this, because I fully understand the value in these small steps. And I've got 2 daughters and I say to them, if you can do one thing, because I've seen that video, just make your bed, the strength that comes from that. And I think people underestimate the small moments and the 5-minute tasks. At home, I make sure I do 5 minutes of yoga in the morning. It might only be 5 minutes because I've got so much to do and 2 children to look after, and I'm trying to work multiple different things. But those 5 minutes, if we give ourselves that value, and what you're saying here, the power that comes from those tiny moments, it's so inspiring just to hear, particularly with, what you're going to continue to share through this interview, but just the magic in that. It's lovely.
And if we, not to say that radio is scripted, but that is a very good link into what I'm about to talk about. But we're going to talk about Freemasonry, because part of my life is that I am a proud Freemason, and I know there'll be groans in the audience and people listening will be probably turning off, but I am a very proud Freemason. And there are oddities to Freemason. There are good and bad people everywhere, but like I said, I'm proud to be a Freemason. I'm proud for it to be known. And my best friend that I've known since I was 3 months old is also a Freemason. And I can't share too much what goes on in a meeting, but there are oddities, right? And I sometimes sit there and I think, what am I doing? Right. But my friend convinced me to join Freemasonry because it was 7 nights a year where I could sit down with him and have an uninterrupted 3-course dinner and a drink and a catch up, because you know what it's like with kids and diaries, you just never overlap. So I was like, I'm sold. And I get 7 nights a year now with my best friend, and I get to have catch ups. But even when we have those catch-ups, I didn't realise that he was struggling. And then recently he's told me he's struggling. And you said about those 5-minute tasks. And I sent him a journaling book. And I know, again, people are probably going to turn off, but I journal because I think it's important.
I journal. I've wrote a book through journaling. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. And I think the journal doesn't have to be a Dear Diary. It doesn't have to be, Dear Deidre. It can literally just be 3 things you wanted to get done in the day, 3 things you did in the day. And it can be very, very small, however you want to focus it. And I sent him a journal and I did that, and he's now said that those 5-minute tasks have helped him, and I really resonate with what you were saying. Just 5 minutes a day, that's all it takes to try and check in with yourself.
If you consider what you had to go through, and that would have probably felt like a really lonely time for you, I imagine, after your accident.
Yeah.
I mean, everything must have changed in an instant from you having your life as it once were to then having to adapt. I mean, how did you feel, if you don't mind me asking, in that moment when you were told you were not going to walk again?
On the end of the bed, my dad was on a chair and the physio was kneeling, and I'd literally just arrived at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which is the National Spinal Centre, and they was explaining to me how it would work there, with the week would work with physio sessions and doctor sessions and all that kind of stuff. And the curtains were drawn. I call them the soundproof, smell-proof curtains, because you always know when something bad is happening, because doctors cordon off the curtains, but they're not soundproof and they're not smell-proof. So actually they're pretty irrelevant other than privacy, you know. And me and my friends in hospital used to joke about the soundproof, smell-proof curtains. But the registrar popped her head through and said, "Oh, Mr. Pritchard, we've looked at your scans and you're not going to walk again." And I kind of just looked at my mum, looked at my dad, and no one reacted. And I just didn't know how to react. And scared, obviously, in that moment. And the physio said, "Well, it's better to rip a plaster off than to leave it eke out." I'm guessing, and I still haven't asked my parents this, but I'm assuming they may have been told prior to me finding out on that bed, because they'd driven up to Wales specially for that moment.
Right. And how old were you at this point then?
I was 24, so it could have come straight to me, but I think in that moment it's nice to have family around, and you know how close I am with my family, so it was definitely appreciative of them being there. And like I said, I go through ups and downs. I have dark days, still have dark days, and I have good days. I'm keen about the Paralympic movement and everything it does. My wheelchair is my greatest asset, but it's also my greatest reminder that my life has changed, and I've done some pretty cool things in that wheelchair, you know, so it's not all bad doom and gloom. There are some positives, and I'm sure we'll get onto them. But yeah, I did struggle, yeah, of course.
So we'll break for another track in a second, but sport prior to your accident was important to you anyway, I understand. Is that right? So sport was always part of your life prior to you going into the direction of the Paralympics?
Yeah, it's like a fabric of me. It's part of my DNA. It's part of my family's DNA. My dad played rugby. My mum was a Welsh netball player. She is the first female to referee in the Principality Stadium, which is a pretty cool thing.
Wow,
And I've got two brothers. So I think if you're born into a family with competitive, sporty people, it's natural that you probably fall towards sport, you know. And I'm not saying everyone needs to do sport, but it's what helps me. It's what resets me. It's what gets me going in the day. And everything became a challenge with two young brothers. Who could eat their dinner the fastest? Who could run up the hill the fastest? Who could climb the stairs the fastest, you know? And I think that basis led me to go down sport, you know, and kind of go down that route. But I had eye operation when I was very young. When I was 5 years old, I had a cataracts when I was 5, which meant that I couldn't do contact sports. So rugby was out. The military dream was gone because I couldn't serve in the military with a cataract at the time. And my then PE teacher, I just basically spend the time running around the fields, because in the winter in Wales, the boys do rugby and in the summer they do football. That's kind of how it is in Southwest Wales. So my PE teacher, Mr. Bartley, who I'm very close with still, just didn't give up on me. He said, "Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to run?" Yes. So I went running, and I was, became a decent runner. Then I started swimming, and being born in Swansea, the coast is right on our doorstep. So everyone kind of learns to swim and is part of their fabric and who they are. And then my biology teacher, a lady called Mrs. Smith, said, "Oh, I'm doing Ironmans, and this is what they are. And I think you may be able to be a good triathlete. You're a good runner. You're a good swimmer. Why don't you take up cycling?" And kind of that was my first foray really into proper competitive sport was triathlons. I've represented age group Great Britain, Wales, I've done pretty well at that. But then reality hits, you go to university, you get a job, you realize you're never going to go to the Olympics in that sport, and you've got to get a proper job. There's only so much you can live this fake life of I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it. And reality hits, you go to do work, and then you realize you can't train for 3 sports at the same level that I was training at. So I had to choose my favorite one, which was cycling. So I chose cycling, and I spent hours and hours and hours on that bike, and have made great friendships through cycling, and love being in the nature, love being out in the windy lanes, listening to your tires and the chains, and the kind of romantic, artistic nature of cycling as well. I followed the Tour de France and all the Belgium races, and just love it. I still love cycling. It's still one of my favorite sports to watch on TV. But ultimately, it's the sport that took away my ability to walk, right? So it's that love-hate relationship with something. My good friend is an Olympic silver medalist in cycling. One of my other good friends just broke a record locally on the HC 110 course, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
so, there's still parts of me that checks in with that society and that group of people. But yeah, I've moved now to a different sport.
And in fact, let's break for another track and then we will come back and talk about how rowing became what it is for you now. Should we go with a bit of Nat King Cole?
Yeah.
That stuck with me from you saying that was your first record. I think we'll play a bit of Nat King Cole and then come back and talk about your rowing.
Perfect.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
That was Nat King Cole there. And I'm with Ben Pritchard. If you've just tuned in, we're having a wonderful conversation about his inspiring life story and journey through sport and music. And if you have missed the beginning of this interview, I would encourage you listen again, which you can do so at marlowfm.co.uk. Ben, thank you for being with me today. It's so lovely and inspiring. And we're coming on to the rowing part of your journey, after you sharing your passions, and that's led you to both, passion and difficulty, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Through what you shared. But how did rowing become your next kind of sport that you really got into? I mean, obviously you're now paralysed from the waist down, which you've shared, which brings both new direction and excitement, but equally difficulty. But why rowing? What triggered that for you?
So I went to Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which is the birthplace of the Paralympic movement, and because of that, they understand the benefit sport has for people after injury, illness, etc., etc., etc. And every week they used to do a rowing session just to keep people fit. And I hated those sessions. I honestly hated pulling the chain back and forth. I found it really boring on the ergo. And I went and spoke to a couple of the other inpatients and was saying that I found it really boring and I'd rather do a different thing. Is there something else I could do? And a man called John Cook said that there's a leaderboard behind the physio's door. And it was that moment that kind of like a light bulb went. I went, oh, okay, maybe I could try and climb that leaderboard.
Would you say you're a little bit competitive?
No, not at all. But if that sentence hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am now. And, I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason and fate. And my first week in hospital, or I think it was like the second week in hospital, British Rowing came in and did like an outreach program with the patients at hospital. Stoke Mandeville very good at putting that on. I used to call it after school clubs because when you were at Stoke Mandeville, once you were deemed medically fit by the doctors, you could come and go as you please. As long as you were back for your appointments and you stayed the night in the hospital, you could go to town, you could go to a coffee shop, you could explore and live your life in your chair. But my house in London wasn't accessible and my family lived in Swansea. So
Right.
I couldn't just pop to family,
No.
I had a good load of visitors come to visit me, but I couldn't just pop out.
Yeah.
So I used to make like these after school clubs used to appear on the notice boards, dancing, singing songs, loads of things used to come up. And then sometimes it would be sports organisations.
Do you like singing, by the way?
No, I'm not very good at singing. I am not a good singer. It's probably a big curse. I love to sing, but I'm not very good.
We won't ask
No,
you for a
please
song
don't.
now. Okay.
But yeah, so I used to go to these after school clubs, and British Rowing were there, and I enjoyed it and got to learn a little bit more about it. And two ladies, a lady called Ella Willett and Hannah Lawton, they were the two ladies that came in. And again, you just get like energy from people, right? And Hannah at the time was trying to train to row the Atlantic, and Ella just was like a bundle of energy that loved the sport.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, if this boring rowing chain back and forth gets these people that excited, and then there must be something about it. So I kept training to try and climb that leaderboard. And then in my last week in hospital in December, British Rowing returned for another after school club. And basically the training for that leaderboard and trying to beat John meant that I got to a point where they were now interested in actually inviting me to get classified and trial, and the rest kind of is history. And from hating rowing a rowing machine to the first time I went on the water and the freedom I felt watching my wheelchair disappear, that's the hook. Was when I was newly injured and I was struggling to come to terms with that, I got to watch my wheelchair disappear for an hour a day, and then that hour a day became 2 hours a day. Then it became, I maybe could do this as a part-time job. Then it became my full-time job, and now I'm lucky that it is my main job. And yeah, that's kind of what made me stick around, was that sense of freedom. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about in a minute.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
So cycling, rowing, do you get this? It must be a different kind of freedom because there's something special about the water, I think, isn't there? Anyway, I do like cycling. I've probably rowed once really unsuccessfully. But do you think there's a different kind of freedom in each sport?
I would say that cycling and rowing provide the same sense of freedom. You're outside, you're outdoors, you're in the lanes, you're on a river, you're in nature, the sounds, and when you're not focusing on a really hard, intense session, you can kind of just switch off and enjoy what's around you. And where I'm very lucky to travel the world rowing, and we go on training camps in beautiful places, in massive rivers, and there's a place in Temple in France where we train in January, and I call it Kingfisher Corner because you can go to that corner and you can sit and you'll see kingfishers, and that's such a rare bird and like scarce bird and hard to see that it's great that I can just spend 5 minutes of enjoyment for me, whilst doing the thing I love to do. And I think that's kind of what I love about sport is whatever your sport is, whatever your passion is, it recharges you as well as drains you. If you think about my grueling training program, and it is a grueling training program, 6 days a week, 3 to 2 sessions a day, or 2 to 3 sessions a day, 49 weeks of the year, that's a lot of hurt, right? But within that, I can still get recharged, and it's something that is an idiosyncratic composition, like something that takes away energy shouldn't be able to recharge you, but for me, it does.
Well, I think it's quite interesting from a mindful perspective that in where you shared about the cycling with the sound of the chains and this, and now you're talking about the kingfishers and I imagine the sound of the water, you're really present with all your senses when you're doing the rowing, aren't you?
Yeah, and because I can't turn around that well in the rowing boat, if we talk about my heat at Paris. So my heat at Paris, there's 6 rowers side by side. We are all strapped in various guises because we're all slightly different disabilities. I can't turn around past a certain point, so I can't see what's behind me. Anyway, we go off, the gun goes, I start, I'm in front, and then I notice that the Italian overtakes me, but he's a couple lanes away, so I now can't turn around to see where he is. So my only sense that I've got to know where he is sound throughout the race, and I'm rowing down the course and I can't hear him. I can hear my blades entering the water, and then all of a sudden I can hear like another splash, and I'm like, that wasn't me. And then you can hear it a little bit more clearly, and then you can hear that he's made a mistake on the blade because the way the water sounds off the blade. And once you learn to tune into everything other than sight, you can make decisions and judgments. And it was that point I made a judgment or a decision call to push, and then that's the point that I broke him and I went and won my heat, and yeah, I try to be as mindful in a racing situation as I am in a training situation. And I think that takes time and practice and skill. And actually, when my psychologist for British rowing suggested that I take up mindfulness and in racing and visualization, I was like, nah, that's not me. But actually, it's probably one of my biggest skill sets that I have now is the ability to just tune into what I'm doing in that moment.
That's so amazing. I mean, as a mindfulness teacher, welcoming all is so powerful. And I love it. And it promotes the freedom. And you're so inspiring to talk to.
I appreciate it.
Honestly, you are. I just think from the relationship with your dad and the support you've had around you and your just passion for sport and being so present and really aware of everything. Honestly, it's so inspiring, Ben, to listen to. And I want to move on we'll play another track, but I just want to really understand, you've got such a passion and drive going forward to help people, the local community, rowing clubs, and what people can do to support and help you with that, which we're going to go on to. And I just think it'd be fantastic for more people to get involved. And, there's so much opportunity out there, and sometimes people just aren't aware of it.
No, and I think rowing has this persona of being elitist and doors up kind of attitude, and actually I think that once you've broken that down, you'll understand that it is a sport open to all, and that is one of the values of British rowing, is open to all. That's the middle value of British rowing. So we'll talk about Love Rowing and the stuff I'm doing with the Oxfordshire Freemasons to try and raise £10,000 to make the river more accessible to various different people. But I think if people want to go down to rowing clubs, just go and knock the door. They're not going to turn you away, because rowing is a shrinking sport. They need members. Everyone needs memberships. Everyone needs people through the door. That's how we all survive. And they will be welcoming. It might be a bit different to what you're used to, but they will be welcoming. And I think the reason why, if you don't mind, do you want to play the track now and we'll go into Love Rowing?
Yes, we are going to do that. I wanted to ask you a question actually, because we're
Okay.
obviously very lucky here to have a lot of rowing. You know, we've got Marlow and Henley and Maidenhead. There's a lot of river nearby here. And have you ever been to the River and Row Museum in Henley?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Have you taken your daughter to the little Wind in the Willows?
Yeah, and my daughter's been on the rowing machine upstairs as well. So
I love it in there. But yes, let's play another track and then we will come back and talk about love rowing.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
That was Mr. Blue Sky, and Ben is with me today. Ben Pritchard, he is sharing so much wisdom and so much joy here in the studio. Ben, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel truly inspired by just talking to you. And I'd just love to hear more about love rowing, because that's where your journey has taken you. You know, life wanted you to be a rower as well as a cyclist. So you've had the pleasure of doing both. And now that's a huge, huge part of your life, isn't it?
Rowing has given me so much, from a moment where I couldn't lift my head off a pillow to winning a Paralympic medal. Now, not everyone will make that journey, but in that I've learned lessons about myself, who I am and what I do, through the sport of rowing, that I think lots more people could have access to rowing, especially in small communities. You know, we're very blessed here that we've got lots of rowing clubs on the river. But when I went back to Swansea after hospital, there was one club that got me on the river, City of Swansea Rowing Club. They train out of the back of a Sainsbury's car park with 2 containers. You know, no clubhouse, no bar, nothing like that. And then when I went back to work after my paid absence, I went back to work, and it took British Rowing an hour and a half's drive to find a club that would say yes to me accessing the water. And I don't want that to be the case for somebody that wants to try rowing going forward. So Love Rowing is British Rowing's charitable foundation, and they open doors to people to the water through various different schemes. They've got school kids in Birmingham and Bedford, inner city school kids. They've got underrepresented groups. They've got accessible groups. They've got women that have suffered some abuse in their life, accessing the water and building relationships through that. And then we touched earlier that I'm also a very proud Freemason, and there's this year Oxfordshire is celebrating their tercentenary, which is huge, you know. And as part of that, the Regattas Lodge in Henley have decided to partner with Love Rowing and try and raise £10,000 to set a scheme right here in the Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Berkshire region, you know, and trying to put on a scheme for people underrepresented in our communities right here, you know, because we all see Comic Relief, we all see those big charities that raise money for people away, you know, but actually what we're doing right on our doorstep in our communities that people that we see every day. So that's the big plan.
Yeah, so how can we help? How can we get involved? What does that look like for anyone that's listening, that's passionate about what you're sharing, that might have thought about rowing or would like to do it, but it doesn't feel accessible to them? You know, like you say, it does look like quite an elitist sport. To a lot of people see it as a university hobby, and then it goes on to be quite a specialist thing. But it's accessible to everyone. You're modelling how whatever challenges life throws at you, you can do something you really love and get enjoyment out of building up from a starting place of not knowing anything at all to, I mean, you're sensational. Not everyone's journey will look the same, but they'll still get the same joy and pleasure out of what that looks like for them. So how can we get involved?
Absolutely. You know, now's a great time to get involved because summer's around the corner and the water is nicer and warmer. So lots of clubs at this time of year will be running learn to row courses. But you know, we have Regattas Lodge and Oxfordshire Freemasons have raised £5,000 already to this cause, and we're hoping to raise another £5,000. And I think Marlow FM are going to run a competition which we'll discuss later, I'm assuming, or
we will come on to that next, Ben.
Okay. But I think, you know, if people want to support this cause, then they can reach out to the Regattas Lodge in Henley. The information will be on the Oxfordshire Freemasons website, and then they can reach our treasurer there and he'll be able to direct you to the right place. We'll then send a big, what's it called, like a comic check, you know, the big checks to Love Rowing, and we'll announce and hopefully I'll come back on here and announce what the partnership is going to be in Marlow or Maidenhead that we're
Of
going to be doing.
course. Yes, so we will run a competition and we will get people to get involved, because I think you also shared that, I mean, you're such an inspiring man and there will be a lot of people that can learn from you, and you're happy to, we haven't set a date yet, but to spend some time with someone at some point as part of this, aren't you? So someone that wins can spend some time with you.
Yeah, the idea is when this was floated to me, I kind of laughed because I didn't think people would want to enter a competition to spend time with me, but we're going to go with that. And
They would.
And I remember the first time I held a gold medal, and it was Ben Ainsley's. It was a sailing competition. It was at the Oppie Nationals down the South Coast, and he presented our medals, and then he also had his gold medal on him, which he allowed us to hold. And I still remember that to this day, and I think that they're so special, and it might seem a bit narcissistic, and it might seem a bit like, oh, look at me, I've got a gold medal, but not everyone gets to hold one, not everyone gets to see one. So I think that by allowing people to come and spend an afternoon with me, they can see the boat that I raced Paris in, they can see the medal, they can hold the medal, they can find whatever inspiration they want from that moment, but also they can just ask any questions they may have. It's not every day you get to sit with a Paralympic champion or have questions about coffee. It doesn't have to be about rowing. We can talk about anything. So
Can we talk about coffee actually, Ben?
we absolutely can talk about
But
coffee.
before that, for anyone listening, we are going to be running a competition here at Milo FM, which you will hear more about. And we're going to be announcing that on the shows of just how you can spend time with Ben. And we will get in touch with the winner and we will take you to that invitation to spend some time with Ben. So do stay tuned with Milo FM in the coming weeks, because we will be sharing that competition with you.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
Ben, let's talk about coffee. I love coffee.
Yeah. What's your favourite order? What's your order?
Well, I must admit, I've actually got into some coffee I went on a weekend, which was called the 100 Human Experience, where you submerged in ice baths, all extreme, kind of crawling around on the floor like animals, becoming really present with all your senses. And it was, you had to skip around and cool things out. And it was really kind of just embodying who you are in a safe space. And there was a company there called London Nootropics who do adaptogenic blend coffees.
Oh, wow.
And with different types of natural products. And I just absolutely love their coffee. But alternatively, and I'm going to give a little shout out actually to a local company, but there's a lovely local coffee shop, can't even remember the name of it, as I go past Pen Pond, just not too far from here, and they do the most delicious coffee. All I know is it's a number 5, which is what I have at home. And I love it. I do like to filter my own coffee now, because my brother's made me into a bit of a coffee snob.
Okay.
5 years ago, I didn't even drink coffee. But what's your go-to coffee?
So my go-to would be a cappuccino in the morning or a flat white in the afternoon. That's kind of my go-to coffees. I like a lighter roast rather than a darker roast. My journey into coffee started through sport. So when I was a cyclist, I was obviously looking for sponsors and also did a load of reading about the science of caffeine and the benefit you can get. And I found this company, and I will plug it, sorry, but called True Start Coffee. And at the time, they could guarantee you 95 milligrams of caffeine per teaspoon of coffee. So as a cyclist, I could work out how many teaspoons of coffee I needed to get a buzz. Because I was fed up of driving up and down the motorway to service stations, and one coffee would give you a buzz and one coffee wouldn't. And from there, then, I kind of delved into the science of coffee, and I'm a bit of a nerd. And when I decided to leave London and move back to Wales for good, I couldn't afford a house where my parents are from because it's very expensive. So I kind of settled in a place called Ammanford, which is this sleepy little town, mining town in Wales, just off the M4. And I see sleepy with a bit of a smile on my face because it was made that way after the last mine closed in 2003. And my friend set up a coffee company with his mum and dad in 2003 called Coal Town Coffee. And I do everything with purpose in my life. Everything I do has to have a purpose, because otherwise, why are you doing it? Time is too short. Don't do things just to do them. There has to be a purpose of why you're doing things. And the vision behind Coal Town is to bring industry back to post-industrial mining towns, because Scott, Janine and Gordon realised that in 2003, when the last colliery closed, the logistic companies left town, the haulage companies left town, the storage companies left town, everything left. So this one thriving industry town just became so derelict and so sleepy in inverted commas. So they have built up this empire, which we call Cold Town Coffee, which I like to work in and be part of, and share the message and share who they are. If anyone's coming to Henley Royal Regatta, we're at the Henley Royal Regatta in Little Lions Meadow. You can come and try our coffee and
I will.
and taste it. But that's my vehicle of change. There is, we use coffee to do good. So we buy everything from green to bean. We buy it in, we roast it in-house. We sell to 456 coffee shops in the UK. We have a roastery we have a roastery which has a little cafe attached to it, and then we also have a bricks and mortar coffee shop in Ponte de Lais. Please come and visit us. We're happy to give tours of the roastery.
I would love to.
But we use that as a vehicle of change to make good in our local area. So that's kind of what we do. And we pay 140% above fair trade price for our coffee, because we realise that you may be only spending £3.80 for a flat white, but that £3.80 has to serve national insurance increases, the shop running costs, but also farmers, shipping companies, and everyone has to take a chunk out of that £3.80 for your coffee. And actually, when you boil it down, if a farmer's only making £2 for one coffee, then they're not going to make a lot of money, So we try to do good, and we actually have invested in a women's only cooperative in Peru. So there's loads of stuff that we're doing in the space, and we're trying to be a bit different, because the specialty coffee world is becoming so filled with new startups, a bit like the craft beer industry was, that we're trying to do something a bit different.
You're a man of many hats, aren't you? There is nothing you can't do. But I agree with your message there about doing something with purpose, because as we come to the end of the interview, Ben, I mean, you've shared so much. I could talk to you all day. And I want to come on to your last track shortly and share why that's special for you. But I just want to say thank you. I mean, I have got so much personally just from talking to you. It really kind of instills my faith in, trust in your experience. We end up where we're meant to go, making a difference, and just the power of those small changes makes, you're just making such a change in this world and for other people, and bringing that forward through Love Rowing and even the coffee journey and just how that looks. It's not just little, is it? There's a whole story, and I think that's what it's all about. The more we share our stories and the more people understand, the more connected we become, and that's what people want. They want to feel connected to something and purposeful, and you're modelling that wonderfully.
I am trying. I am a last of an old gentleman, and I think community, with globalization, which I think is fantastic, but with globalization, with the internet, with everything of the good things that came with globalization, also became a lot of bad. And I think that we're losing our sense of community. And I think that whatever you can do to hone in on your community, for me, it was Freemasons, coffee, rowing, that's kind of my community. And I really try to have an impact in my communities, because I think the more we can do there, the ripple effects will follow,
I couldn't agree more. We are a community station. It's a lovely community of people here as well. And I think, just being part of something is so special to us all. So, Ben, thank you. And before we go, can you introduce and tell me why your last track, and we will play you out with that.
So the track is Motorcycle Drive-By by Zach Bryan, and it's the last track I played 2 seconds before I pushed off to the Paralympic final.
So that takes you to that moment, does it? Every time?
Every time it comes on. And I realised that I would probably spend too much time talking to my competitors. I'm a friendly person. I like to be friends. So with the psychologist, with my coach, we devised a strategy that I would listen to music, which is my other way I switch off, to kind of take me out of in the moment with friends, but focusing on the moment in my ears. So Zach Bryan came on, Motorcycle Drive-By. I had my headphones on, my sunglasses on. I was pushing down the ramp towards my boat to push off, and it just crescendoed really nicely. And then as I went to push off, I took my headphones off and gave it to my coach. And then I was singing the song the whole way up to the start, and it just stayed in my head. And every time that comes on, I just remember that moment. I'm like, why am I enjoying this song so much? I'm like, oh, this was the song I played, and it's kind of what takes me back. So Motorcycle Drive-By by Zach Bryan.
We're going to play you out with that. But before we hit play, Ben, how can people find you? Have you got a website or anything you'd like to share so people can stay in touch?
Social media is probably the best, at Benjamin Pritchard 1. I do have a website. It's www.iambenpritchard.com. A bit narcissistic, but there's a bigger story on that, which we'll touch again.
Okay. And I will be sharing all about the competition, as well as the other presenters here at Marlow FM. So stay tuned for that. And here is your track. Introduce it one last time, Ben, and we will play you out with this.
Motorcycle Drive-By by Zach Bryan.
You're listening to Good Morning Marlow with Kelly Saward in conversation with Ben Pritchard on Marlow FM 97.5.
If you've been listening to me on Marlow FM with the lovely Ben Pritchard and you think you can help us or get involved, please do contact us here at the studio@marlowfm.co.uk, or you can text 07900 975 975. We'd love to hear from you if you want to get involved, support their mission, or just simply find out more how you can start your own journey and love with rowing. Do get in touch.